Sony's been having a bit of a weird week when it comes to PR. So there's that whole situation where they put out an interview with Neil Druckmann, and turns out that they twisted his words so much that Neil Druckmann had to put out a statement about it, and eventually Sony decided to delete the interview because they reviewed it and they found several significant errors and inaccuracies that don't represent his perspective and values, and that was a whole thing. Then there's Herman Hulst, the soon-to-be co-CEO of Sony and PlayStation, coming out with the statement where he said that the strategy is to release Sony and PlayStation published live services on day one for both PS5 and PC, while the single-player narrative-driven games they're intending to release on PS5 first and then on PC, so that PC players will be incentivized to buy PlayStation 5 so they're able to play those experiences early. But I don't think Sony and PlayStation understand the patience that PC gamers have. They'll wait as long as it takes so they can have what they believe to be the ideal version of those games, where they can really tweak the settings, max out the graphics and performance, so on and so forth. So we'll see if that strategy pans out. There's also the whole situation of Sony accidentally leaking Destiny 2's The Final Shape expansion in its entirety. They accidentally published the game on their cloud streaming service, and so there's plenty of spoilers out there now, plenty of footage for something that was not meant to be released at that time. And it was up for like 5 hours before Sony took it down, so that's a pretty significant amount of playtime that people got way earlier, and that definitely did some damage for Bungie. And then there's their recent state of play. The games list for that was leaked prior to its streaming, so there wasn't a whole lot in terms of surprises, but it was still cool to see some of the stuff that they showcased or announced. Monster Hunter Wilds looks great. Astrobot, the fact that they announced a new title for that's got me kind of hyped, not gonna lie. Now, among the stuff that they announced also includes a PC release of God of War Ragnarok, which is great, except for people who live in countries outside of the ones that PlayStation Network supports, and that's kind of the main topic of today's video. We've talked about this situation in the past with other games. The fact that they're doing this with God of War Ragnarok makes absolutely no sense. Going to God of War Ragnarok Steam listing, you'll find this notice that reads, PlayStation Network account required, subject to the PlayStation Terms of Service and User Agreement. So we've talked about why this is actually hugely detrimental. It is a bigger deal than just making an account, especially for people outside of the 69 countries around the world that PSN is available in. Nice. So what the requirement of a PlayStation Network account does is effectively make the game inaccessible to the remaining countries, of which there are a significant amount of, and it's just utter nonsense, especially for God of War. I mean, it was already kind of nonsense when they did it for Helldivers 2, when that game enjoyed many months of not having the PSN requirement and people around the world being able to access the game, even those outside of the PSN supported ones. The fact that they're doing this for a purely single-player experience with no online component whatsoever makes this all the more nonsensical. So that leads to situations like this one right here, where somebody is trying to pre-order God of War Ragnarok on PC, trying to check this game out on PC in their country, except, oops, sorry, an error was encountered while processing your request. This item is currently unavailable in your region because Sony has decided to delist PlayStation games in countries where PSN is not supported. With Helldivers 2, they realized, oh crap, we gotta delist PSN account requiring games from the countries where PSN isn't supported, because allowing people to purchase those games means we're essentially selling them a digital product that will not work for them as a result of the PSN mandate that cannot be circumvented in those countries unless you want to risk being banned from the PlayStation Network. And so yeah, as you can imagine, people who have to deal with this situation are pretty upset. And all this is going to do is encourage piracy. This person was willing to buy the game, give you money, Sony and PlayStation, but now if they want to play the game on PC, they have to resort to other means, so they will likely potentially go out of their way to pirate the game if they can, and that's, lost sales right there. And this is definitely not the way you'll end piracy or fight piracy. If you create a better service than piracy, make it more convenient for people, and make it worthwhile to spend that money, they'll give you money, as this individual wanted to do, except you made that not possible, Sony and PlayStation. Plenty of others are questioning specifically why God of War Ragnarok is requiring a PSN ID. As this individual put it, "This is very odd. I understood Helldivers 2 or Ghost of Tsushima because of the online side of things, but why God of War Ragnarok? This game doesn't have an online component." Yeah, it's utterly confusing and baffling. You can see right here how with Helldivers 2, for example, the game became no longer purchasable in 177 countries where PSN is not available. Same thing happened with Ghost of Tsushima, which is frustrating because there are a lot of people who just want to play Ghost of Tsushima for its single-player component. It should be an optional thing to make a PSN account only for those who want to engage with the online multiplayer component of the game. So Sony and PlayStation started by restricting access to their game for live services in countries where PSN is not supported. Then it's single-player games with online multiplayer components in them. And now we have a full-fledged single-player experience with no online whatsoever getting the same treatment. And I expect that SteamDB will soon publish a similar tweet where they talk about all the countries where God of War Ragnarok will be restricted in. All this comes in after Sony Interactive Entertainment put out an apology saying that they got it wrong with mandating Helldivers 2 to link to a PSN account, and that they're still learning what is best for PC players, and your feedback has been invaluable. Really, has it? Because the feedback has been very clear and you persist on not listening to any of it. This just feels like a smokescreen. This feels like you were just placating people just for this particular moment because the backlash got so bad. But now that the coast is clear, you're deciding to push forward with this anti-consumer move. Now that all eyes aren't on you on this whole situation, now you can finally sneak this by people. They're saying that the reason they're mandating people make a PSN account and link to a PSN account is because account linking plays a critical role in protecting our players and upholding the values of safety and security provided on PlayStation and PlayStation Studios games. This is our main way to protect players from griefing and abuse by enabling the banning of players that engage in that type of behavior. But players are not interacting with each other in God of War Ragnarok in any way, shape, or form because, again, there's zero online multiplayer component whatsoever. There's nothing to protect players from in this isolated single-player environment. This is why when I made my final video on the Helldivers 2 situation where Sony and PlayStation finally pulled back on mandating a PSN ID and linking to a PSN account, I said that people should keep in mind that Helldivers 2 is still no longer purchasable in 177 countries, and I think they added a few more after this. I warned that this is something we still have to wait for. Sony and PlayStation still haven't reversed that. I warned that their FAQ still states in this question of do I have to sign in to PSN to play a PlayStation game on PC. They recently changed it to some PlayStation games and features may require you to sign in or link to an account for PSN, whereas before it said it was optional. And yeah, I warned that this never got changed back to the original answer of PSN accounts and linking to an account are optional. And so I had a suspicion that this whole like, oops, we're sorry, we're learning was a complete and utter deception so that they could calm people down and then really push forward with this mandate that seems to be something that they're going to normalize for every PlayStation published title, regardless of whether it makes sense or not, regardless of whether it has any multiplayer features whatsoever or not. So yeah, I just figured I should give you guys the heads up of what's happening and the fact that tons of people around the world won't be able to play games like God of War Ragnarok on PC, despite the fact that maybe they've been waiting for the game to come on PC to be able to access the game in their country, because Sony and PlayStation decided to implement this utterly pointless restriction that I don't know who this ultimately benefits. You know, there are rumors and speculations that is this Sony trying to like up their PSN numbers to try to make that side of things look good for them? Or is there some kind of genuine reasoning that we're not getting that Sony and PlayStation aren't divulging? I feel like if they had something reasonable to say about why this is necessary, they would have already said that. Their best attempt at trying to reason with us was them saying that they want to protect players from griefing and abuse and all these things, but especially with God of War Ragnarok, that reasoning makes no sense because this is a single-player experience. But yeah, this is the situation, ladies and gentlemen, that Helldivers 2 victory was just a temporary truce before Sony decided to push for this kind of bizarre decision and bizarre mandate and restriction again that doesn't do anyone any favors, really, and it does a disservice to PlayStation fans or fans of PlayStation games who are outside of, the very specific countries where they're deciding to list these games and make them purchasable because of the PSN mandate. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on all this. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.